second speaker tonight that I welcome very warmly is Michael Miller. As I said, Michael has been on board with Lifecare. You may or may not know that over the last, ever since Lifecare has been around, it's been really New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, and I've had the role of trying to run Victoria and some in WA and some in New South Wales. And really there's been very little cross-pollination of ideas, there's been very little sharing, not because people haven't wanted to do it, it just hasn't been a strategic focus. And Lifecare, in their wisdom, decided to bring somebody in that could have that role of trying to develop a strategic approach to integrating the group and creating some of these new ideas and challenges that we meet being sort of met. So, so Michael comes to us tonight to really answer questions as much as anything, but I will ask him just to talk firstly about his experience about herding the various cats together, which has probably been a bit of a challenge over the last 6 months, but I'll ask him to share that with us, and then we'll open up for questions and hopefully have some thoughts and questions you want to ask. So, welcome, Michael.
I'll start off by disagreeing with what Michael just said. I've found it actually very easy to get the states to come together and cooperate. I expected it to be a lot harder, a lot more difficult, sort of people protecting their patch, but no, it hasn't been like that at all. There's a very strong collaboration, which is going to bode very well for where I see Lifecare having to get to in the not too distant future. Perhaps if I could start by sort of saying, I've come on board as a CEO, and I don't know how many people sort of know what that means. What does a CEO do? Well, if you come in as a new CEO, what you do is you look at the organisation in two aspects. One is, how does it run? And in terms of what I've been brought on to do, which is to grow this group almost exponentially through acquisitions, is will the management and the systems that we have cope with that growth? Because if you grow without systems, it'll fall apart. So I've looked at that, and we're going to make some changes that you'll see come on stream in time in our systems and our computer software and things like that, not at a practice level, at a management level. And then we get into the growth aspect, which required me to sit back and say, where do I see this organisation going in the future? What does this organisation need to do to be part of health in the future? Now, I came to the conclusion, like in many other industries, that there's going to be consolidation in health and a sort of concentration of power, of market power. That's going to be in your private hospital groups, and it's going to be in your health funds. You control the money, and you're seeing it in the hospital groups, in the private sector, in things like public-private partnerships in building new hospitals. Geelong Hospital, public-private partnership with Epworth. Northern Beaches in New South Wales, public-private with Costco. That's the future of health. Now, the health scopes, Ramsay's, Epworth's, St John of God's, and whatever, are not going to sit still and say, okay, well, we've got a hospital and we're pretty happy with that. They're going to keep growing and growing and growing. I had a meeting this morning with one group, and it's very much what they've got in mind, is expanding their services outside the hospital. So, strategically, the group needs to engage in this entire process with the public sector, which we're already starting to do. We're talking to the public sector about essentially privatisation of some of their services. In the private sector, about engaging with them so that we're part of what they're doing in terms of consolidation. If we don't take that approach, then we will end up being a practice. One of our practices will be on a like this. It will be a fantastic facility with fantastic people, but in time, the flow of patients will just diminish and diminish and diminish. We end up becoming practices that are on the outside of the window looking in saying, I wish I was part of that. So strategically we're saying we have to be aligned with these groups. And so we're doing a lot of work in that already. And I see that's very important to our future. Going back to growth, part of that ties into growth. We are looking at making strategic acquisitions of practices and groups that will see Lifecare get bigger and bigger nationally. The mandate that I've been given apart from the administration of running this organisation, that, as I keep saying, is growth. But I want to see Lifecare grow, but I want to see our practices also grow, or at a very minimum, if that's what the practices want, to maintain where they are, which is why the strategic alliances become very important to keep the patient flow into the practices. Growth for growth's sake? No. If strategically a very large organisation has the capacity then to be taken seriously in negotiations with the public health system, to be taken seriously in negotiations with the private health sector that we need to engage with. If you're trying to engage with somebody like Peninsula Health as a single practice in Frankston, well, they're not going to take you seriously. They'll say, it's lovely, it's nice, however, right? Whereas Lifecare, even at the size it is now, if I go and engage with the public health sector, which we're doing in New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia already, they take it seriously because they're looking at outreach programs and things that we can assist them with. And these are the sort of things that we want to feed into the practices. So it's growth for Lifecare, which is fantastic for the shareholders, but it's also protecting the business as a minimum for the practices, but trying to drive more business to the practices. Now, if you're running a women's health clinic, we're not going to be saying to you, as a specialist clinic, we want you to do all these hip replacements or knee reconstructions. We're trying to change your business. We're trying to bring opportunity to you so that your business can be vibrant. I see a very bright future for Lifecare. As most people will probably know, there's talk about it becoming a public company, and that's sort of progressing, but that's not going to change at a practice level or at any level in the organisation anything more than funding to be able to make these acquisitions. So, having done all that, sort of being very sort of pleased with myself that I've sort of worked out all the direction and what this organisation should be doing, I was handed a paper from the APA, which is the APA Practices of the Future 2025. I presume most people here have read that. So I've written down a couple of the sort of salient points from that. And the APA Practice of the Future 2025, right? Practice will be equipped with business acumen. Okay, well, we think that Lifecare will have that. In fact, I will insist that we have business acumen. By business acumen, we mean able to run your business, but be able to maintain the viability of the business. Connected with technology, all these sort of things that John's been talking about, because technology is becoming more and more important in health. There's seminars, there was a meeting last night in New South Wales talking about that very thing in health in New South Wales. Partner in research, teaching and training. John's making great strides in that already, and we're already involved in teaching and getting involved in research in New South Wales and Western Australia. Broader range of services, in other words, multidisciplinary. I see that as in a clinic where it's appropriate that if it's multidisciplinary, it becomes more of a one-stop shop. And so that referrers or people that are looking for a service will say, oh, but I know where to get that. And I've used the phrase a few times saying that a larger clinic with multidisciplinary services that is marketing itself and getting well known starts to generate its own oxygen in terms of activity and reputation. So again, what the APA is saying, I probably should have written this myself. Responsive to changing workforce, so part-timers, employment mobility, locums, which is something we need to get working on as well. Perhaps sharing locum services with other organisations, which was a subject I spoke about this morning. And then it goes on about alliances and partnerships, which is where I see our future is very, very important. Probably at a sort of a higher level, and I don't mean that in any other term, that these strategic alliances with groups like St John of God or whatever, so that it brings benefits to the practices. As I said, I've got two responsibilities. One is to grow the business as a whole, and the other is to the practice level, to make sure the practices stay viable. So, really, I guess it's about it. As I said, we're ensuring that we have the financial backing, not because we have financial problems, but to go on an acquisition sort of trail around the country, sort of buy up what we can strategically of great practices. Just requires money, and then, as I said, the management to back it. So that's it at a sort of an overview level of how I see Lifecare and its vision and the vision for Lifecare. I see it as a very exciting organisation, which will become a dominant force in allied health in this country. Any questions? Michael?
Michael, where do you see the sort of nexus with aged care, number one, but also with the reality that people are being virtually pushed out of hospital and being expected to be cared for in the home? That's obviously trends. Those two trends are going to grow. How do you see Lifecare fitting into that, and do Lifecare providing those services anywhere else?
In terms of aged care, we all know that there's two possible streams of aged care. One is pain management with TENS, which I don't know if I should have led off by saying I was a physiotherapist. So perhaps I should have said that. Perhaps I shouldn't say it at all. But anyway, the model of putting TENS on people and whatever, I think is probably people would say it's a bit flawed in terms of quality of service. But in Western Australia, we have a home care service which provides quality care, and it charges for it, and it's going really, really well. And it's something we want to replicate in all states, because it is something. In 1st of July, the aged care programs, the packages, become consumer choice. So instead of the approved provider saying, you will have your pain care from this physiotherapy group, they have to offer choice. So we're very well positioned for that, because we're offering the choice of a quality service. That's going really well in Western Australia, without even the major contracts of groups like St Ives or Southern Cross Care asking us to do national. RSL Lifecare, believe it or not, is a group that's also asked us to look at national. And it's just massive opportunities. Getting the people to work in aged care is possibly problematic. However, there seems to be more and more of a trend of people that want to engage in aged care specifically, rather than the traditional musculoskeletal sports physiotherapy and whatever. So I think it's a case of watch this space. In Western Australia, they're not having problems getting physios or podiatrists, for that matter. I don't know where the podiatrists are in this room, but again, it's a multidisciplinary service, and all of these programs require a multidisciplinary approach. The second one, hospital in the home, or home rehabilitation, as it was described to me this morning, is going to go gangbusters, and it's simple. It comes back to money, which is pretty grubby, but it's the way it is. Most people here would know that a private hospital gets paid a certain amount of money for an episode in the hospital. So if it's a knee replacement, they get a certain amount of money. If they can get that person out of the hospital as quickly as possible, not taking up a bed, it has two effects. One is the costs for them are lower, the fee stays the same. And the second one is that if you get more throughput of a bed, you need less beds, or you don't have to build more to get more people through your hospital. So we're going to see more and more hospital in the home programs, which will obviously have to be multidisciplinary, from nursing for obvious reasons, through to physio or whatever it is, OT, these sort of things. So again, a multidisciplinary approach, and it's something we're working to get into very quickly. Home care in Western Australia is not hospital in the home, and I'm currently having discussions with quite a few hospital groups about hospital in the home. Now, the benefit for the practices, you go, well, how does that help me? Benefit for the practices, if we have an extensive network, is that we say, patient is in hospital, patient doesn't go to a rehabilitation bed, because it's a different route. It goes from hospital to home, as home hospital, but then once that episode of home hospital is finished, we refer to the clinics, our clinics. So we've become involved in the process, and the system, become part of the system, so that the end result is the person ends up at the clinic for their ongoing rehab. So that's why we get involved in it, other than it being a very good business in its
Would that be
own
led by public or by private, do you think? Where's the push coming at the moment?
Push is in private, public's a lot slower. There's still a lot of resistance to private involvement in public allied health. I think that goes back well before I was a physio even, which was a long time ago, I can promise you. And it's been traditionally public-private and whatever. But those barriers are being broken down. In New South Wales, there's a lady, I don't know if you know her, Jenny Aitken, was a state manager in New South Wales, is on the board of the APA now. I've got Jenny specifically liaising with the public sector in New South Wales and nationally, and with the health funds nationally, so that we can become part of their processes where we can. That may be things like we're about to start trialling a diabetes program in New South Wales, which is a start in the public health sector. So it's RPA with their program of diabetes going out to our clinics. So again, it's driving patients to the appropriate clinics, appropriate patients, appropriate clinics. The hospital and the home is going to be huge. And as you know, Michael, we've already started some discussions along those very lines with one of the big hospital groups here in Victoria. Another question?
Other services, other allied services, what is your view on that? I mean, if it's multidisciplinary, where does that begin and where does that end, do you think, in terms of life care?
Well, we had an interesting proposal put to us just not so long ago, just to answer your question in a roundabout way, which is about Chinese medicine. There's a Chinese medicine group offered to us. Do we buy them? So that's an interesting one. I hadn't considered that. Probably not, because it's getting a little bit too left field. Look, allied health really will come down to, I think, three major sectors, and I don't want to offend anyone. It's only because of the size of the businesses within allied health as a whole. If you look at the allied health market in Australia, it's a $5.6 billion a year industry. It's huge. But within that, nursing is big, physiotherapy is big, and psychology, social work is big. Podiatry is big, is reasonably big, but there's not as many podiatrists around and so on. So if you look at the workforce numbers and the dollars that are involved, it's those categories. So it's probably always going to be nursing for hospital and the home programs and whatever, physiotherapy, OT and podiatry, but bringing speech in and these sort of things where we need them. So we may be multidisciplinary, but that doesn't mean in your clinic that you've got a full-time speech therapist. It'd be wonderful if you did, but it may be a speech therapist that's doing a day a week or something like that.
The model might be more sustainable to see if we're going to connect up with, say, exercise physiology. We've had a few goes at trying to do that here. We've had EPs here, we've had them at other places, and they've just started EP out at Croydon again. But it may well be that we have strategic liaison with groups that provide that service rather than having them in our clinics? Or do you think it'll be a bit of both?
It could be. I mean, a lot of that will be determined by the clinics. But now that you mentioned exercise physiologists, I probably should have covered them. But we're looking to engage with exercise physiologists because it's a simple matter of market forces. If you have exercise physiologists graduating all around the country, and there's hundreds of them in Perth, and there seems to be lots here, however, then they're going to create a market for their services. It's logical. They're not going to graduate and then say, I'm going to work at McDonald's. They're going to find a market for what they do. And they're moving into what's called the wellness space, which is another area for us and our clinics. So what's wellness? The exercise physiologists are getting involved in workplace exercises, aged care exercise programs, all the sort of things that sound pretty familiar as physios. So physiotherapy as a profession can say, I don't want to engage with exercise physiologists because that's my turf, right? You can do that. But the exercise physiologists are not going to say in return, oh, I'm sorry, that's your turf, I won't walk on it. they're going to create a market for their services when they're doing it already. So I think as an organisation that we, at our peril, would ignore them and discount them as not being of any value, but rather to embrace them and see how we can make that fit into our organisation. And it may be that if you're, instead of a physio taking a falls class or something like that, that's an exercise physiologist. I'll leave that to the practitioners because we never interfere at a practitioner level in their clinical decision making, but we can make it available to them if they want to utilise it. So I've obviously covered everything. There's no questions. It's fantastic.
So just you touched on practitioner level. A lot of talk's been done about the sort of top of the group essentially, but is there any strategies that you're bringing into place specifically to help out the individual practitioners sort of through the bottom to help them to go up there? I guess the big challenge is for all physios is how to make a decent living out of their profession, and is there any scope that you're bringing into the organisation to move up that chain into the equity, into the equity scheme and into the any training that you're going to put in place to continue to develop those kind of economic schemes for the English practitioner?
Yeah, I see that perhaps in two ways. One is training. I'm passionate about training. Is that we provide training programs essentially in business to our equity partners at a practice level. And I'm not being condescending when I say that, but as a physio, when I was running a practice, I knew nothing about business. Nothing. I ran a successful practice. I ran successful practices. I had a really quite large occupational rehab business as well. I didn't know a lot about business. Probably maybe I fluked it, I don't know. I've since learned more than enough. So I see that training and talking about how to read a P&L, how to promote your business, all this sort of thing at the practitioner level is very important in terms of opportunities for practitioners who maybe aren't equity partners. I take a view that if you've got somebody in a practice who wants to get ahead and become an equity partner, that Lifecare will support that and look at them maybe starting another practice or buying a practice and becoming an equity partner there. We would promote that as being sort of a bit of a career path for people that are working in practices. So when they say, okay, but I want my own practice, we'll support them. We don't want to lose them out of the organisation. We want the organisation to foster that. I also see for our admin people that they have training as well. Training, so that they have the skills and promote their skills into being able to provide better services at the clinic level. So I think it's very important that we do all of these things from, at the moment I'm focusing on changing a lot of computer systems and things like that, so it's fairly intensive in terms of the resources that we've got to bring to bear on that and the time, the people that we've got to do it. But I see it very, very important to go down to all practices and all people working in the practice and making the opportunity to learn what they want to learn available. And part of that is going to be online resources, not just for a physio wanting to know how to do treat a knee or something like that, but management tools, how to learn about business online, how our admin people, how to deal with difficult customers, all this sort of thing. So that we focus more on training. It's not all going to happen overnight, but if we don't have a plan of where we want to get to, then just wander around the country. So that's not my idea of how to manage. So we have a plan and it's going to get executed. At the moment we're just going through how to execute the plan. But any feedback is welcome, I promise you. If you've got ideas, if you've got things that you feel should be addressed either now or in the future, and we can get to them, then fire them in. That's what Michael's for. Send them to Michael. No, I'm only kidding. You can send them.
Your last practice as a physio?
Oh. when I'm not treating my wife. She doesn't let me rest from doing that. That would have been 20 years ago.
What have you been doing in that meantime?
Business development, mergers and acquisition and management, mainly in Southeast Asia and China, and mainly with multinationals. So it's the normal career path for a physio. You go and do that
sector, or
no, not never in health.
So in theory, this whole process now is a bit of a new thing for you too.
No, it's not. It's the same for every business.
Even though it's a different industry.
Different industry, it's the same process. As I said, you look at how the business runs. I'm not saying that this organisation should have. I think it's probably one of the few organisations that should have. It needs somebody from the health sector, I feel, to be CEO. Not because I am, but I just feel it does. There's a bit of an understanding that you need to have about allied health and health. Ethics and that type of thing are paramount, which sometimes, particularly in larger businesses, fall by the wayside, or perhaps they don't pay as much attention to it. The process is always the same. How does this operation run? What is this? What is the vision? What is the future for this organisation? You have to be quite clear about that. Because you can have fantastic management, you can have brilliant management, but if the organisation is going nowhere or going backwards, then you're just managing rubbish. So you've got to have that vision about where to go, and that's, I think, we have now. Quite clear about where this organisation needs to go. And it needs to be a big organisation, and it needs to be big to protect all the practices. Because each practice is its own small business within the larger group, and the only way to protect that is to be very large and engaging. So yeah, I'm quite clear about where we need to get to.
Does that also partly address Ryan's question about the opportunity and development? If it gets bigger, does that create opportunities for someone like Ryan to achieve equity and improve his situation by learning as well, by getting bigger? Can that happen if you don't get bigger, do you think?
Well, I would like to see people that want to take the opportunity to get bigger. And I've discussed this sort of with Michael, and we sort of argued about it backwards and forwards a little bit. And I think Michael sort of supports the concept of cluster, where if you've got a practice and you enjoy management and you're good at it and whatever, then we will support you to go and start another practice or buy a practice nearby to start creating a geographical cluster of practices that you're involved in. And I see that as a progression. And part of what I was saying in that is, if you've got somebody who is working in the practice wants to become an equity holder themselves, then you could partner with them. I call it the old head with the young head, which we're trying in a clinic in New South Wales, and it's going very well. The older head doesn't practice there. He's sort of the management partner. The younger person is working in the clinic, working very hard, and learning more and more about how to manage the clinic. So I can then see the day where they might start another one, or somebody else would step on. So this sort of mini career path. But as the organisation gets much, much larger, I see also career paths in management for people. I see a whole range of opportunities for practitioners to do what they want to do. Maybe that they want to do some research project. It's just the opportunities that being very big create are quite extensive. And as I said, including career paths. Because we are pushing into hospital services and things like that. So there's, by the time you get, I met with a lady the other day who is a physio, and she's managing an enormous number of people. I said, "Will you do any treating?" She said, "You're kidding, I can't." So all she does is manage. So yeah, there's different career paths for different people depending on what they'd like.
Michael, so who do you see as Lifecare's competitors in this space or in this trajectory to become big?
There are no competitors at the moment, right? Because, but there will be competitors. I had a meeting the other day with a group that's got lots lots and lots and lots of money with a view to them consolidating businesses in allied health. I said, well, that's interesting. How are you going to go about that? And they said, oh, well, we're not sure, but we think it's a good idea. So it's going to happen. You've got Australian Unity has bought a group called Rehability, a abbreviation of Remedy. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. Is a hospital in the home organisation. So Australian Unity is bought into that. Bupa, there's talk about Bupa, who've bought dental clinics, moving into allied health. So that's something. But they're coming at it from a different angle. They're coming at it as trying to contain costs and to provide member services. When they say member services or preferred provider, they mean contain costs. Right? It's very simple. Don't get mixed up with the jargon. Become a preferred provider, you charge less. It's as simple as that. So if you want to greater throughput, maybe, then you can go down there. I don't want to see us go there. That's my view.
Who do you think the competitors are? Do you think they are? Do you disagree with it? Do you see Back in Motion, for example, as a
not in the sort of direction that you're describing.
Back in Motion is a different model to us. It's not an equity, it's a franchise system. And they're doing very well. I'm pleased with them. It's great. And I can't remember the name of the guy that runs it, but apparently he's Jason Smith, that's it. Apparently
They do have a lot of system, I don't know what you call them, but I know they run nursing home stuff, centralised. I think they do allied health home stuff as well. So
yeah, no, that's possibly a competitor, but that doesn't concern me. We actually discussed this for whatever reason the other day, saying that it's actually usually pretty helpful to have a competitor in the marketplace, believe it or not. Yeah, so if there is, I mean, going back to what I said, allied health in Australia is $5.6 billion, right? So if we've got 10% of the market, I think we'd be pretty happy. Right? At the moment, we've got about 1%, not even 1% of the market. So there's plenty of room for growth for everybody. And I think what we need to do is make sure that where we do grow is strategically correct, it's good for everybody, and that we can manage it and stay the distance as an organisation.
Michael, you mentioned something about research just before. Do you see any future with Lifecare in providing kind of a research avenue that's sort of almost separate from the university? So, I mean, I don't know if this is off on a tangent, but I've often thought that we've got so many practitioners and so many centres, and we treat so many patients, such an opportunity to administer outcomes through surveying on keep it on a patient basis, like sending them links for our everyday patient, you know, when we start treating them halfway through in the end, and actually collecting some really good data in an easy format instead of like running around grabbing, you know, outcome measures all the time. And I just wonder if you have that in your plan at all, because
not specifically, but at a high level, I've said to John and others that we need to support research, right? Initially, perhaps at a university level, but if there's ideas, and John's I'm no expert in research, never done any, and never been involved in any, so I can't speak to that. But if you've got ideas, then put them to John, because I mean that sincerely, right? Because the organisation must engage in these sort of things. That's why we do students and whatever. It builds our reputation. I've actually said to John that we want to engage with the universities to do student placements. They said through Lifecare. They said if it's not through Lifecare, to our affiliates, and if it's not to our affiliates and you know, to the Lifecare family, that it's to other clinics. Okay, so it may be Back in Motion. I think it builds Lifecare's profile within those organisations, the universities and whatever. So yes, I would support any research program.
Because I just got back from a conference in Sydney, and like, they've got a lot of big centres out there with a lot of tiers, you know, under practitioners and surgeons, and they're running a whole lot of research with just data they're collecting from managing their patients, and it's such a massive marketing opportunity.
Yes.
Plus, it's good evidence-based research, which I think we need to be continually doing when we're not up against, competitions, but, continue driving that evidence base. I think that's good as well, as from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I'm not aware of how we go about that, and how they do it in New South Wales, but yeah.
Michael, we talked about opportunities with research and strategic acquisitions, and another opportunity you talked a bit about tonight. What would you say maybe the top 3 attributes of a clinic or an organisation that Lifecare as a body would be looking to strategically acquire?
Strategically to
What
acquire.
would be the top 3 things that you look for?
Well, reputation is pretty well paramount. And by that I think we all know what I mean. There's probably some clinics around where you go, oh yeah, okay, we're not really interested in that one. But there's others where there's evidence-based services being provided, that they're high quality, that the facilities are up to standard, that type of thing. So we look at it sort of subjectively, really. Then you move to the objectively, which is the money side of things, and what they're turning over, and what sort of profitability is like, and then their market share, and how strategically that fits in a market, perhaps geographically or for a service opportunity that we might have identified, and then and its possibilities for potential for future growth.
Probably the ones that don't want to sell are the ones you want to buy.
Exactly the ones we want to buy, yeah.
But Michael, isn't it more so, clinic is quite good, could be good on paper, but it's only as good as the practitioners there. So are you investing in the business, or are you investing into the people more so? Because I know Lifecare's accumulated a lot of clinics over the years that have been quite good, and then the main practitioner or the main practitioners then nick off or retire or whatever it may be, and the clinics will just go through this massive lull. So are we investing in clinics or clinicians or both?
We're investing mostly in clinicians and the people that run the clinics, which
I would think that
essentially is the clinic, isn't it?
I agree.
I mean,
assuming that you can
these
keep
rooms
those
are fantastic. If there's no one here working here, it's useless. So it's
assuming you can keep those practitioners on.
Well, that's by when we buy practices now, we don't sort of say, okay, well, you're for sale, I'll buy you, okay, which has been done in the past, and I think it was found that it didn't work that well. We buy into practices now on the basis that we want to partner for a long time with these people, and that what we bring to the party for them is something that they will find attractive, which is all the back office, the marketing, the IT, the HR, the payroll, all these sort of things that nobody wants to do, because they want to focus on building their practice or treating patients. So we provide all of that. So what we provide sets the practice for the future, but have an understanding with these people of what the future is going to be. Right? If somebody says to us, I want to sell you my practice and walk out the door, well, if there's 3 practitioners there that are great and one guy's leaving, then we can deal with that. It's just about knowing, but that's you're right, you're investing in people, but bringing people on the journey with Lifecare. And because, as Michael said, exactly the practices that don't want to sell to us, the hardest to buy, if you can get them to join Lifecare, for all the reasons that I've said that affect everybody here already, about the future and engaging in being in the mainstream of health in the future, if they engage with that story, with that vision, and then come and join the Lifecare group, then they're in for the long term. Right? It's not just a quick sale and I'm leaving. Otherwise they wouldn't sell to us, they don't need to, in the main. So we are very selective.
Michael, would it be easier if the money is going to be put into purchasing practices to be shifted laterally to the actual already existing practices that are up and running, and then run like a nodal type setup, satellite practices around central hubs?
Yes, and I think that a big part of doing this is being able to convey the vision of Lifecare and why a larger, or being part of a larger organisation but still maintaining your individuality is important. So yes, we might buy a clinic, but then encourage the people maybe to go and, or we encourage another clinic nearby to join as well, or maybe set up a greenfields. But to try and get this collaboration of practices, because really it's going to get harder and harder for practices that are just an individual practitioner in the future. I sincerely believe that. If you look at just the federal government's just announced that it's going to go ahead with the electronic notes for patients. So if you're not engaged with that, then you become automatically outside that system in the future. I'm not saying in 6 months' time you're going to be going, oh, well, I'm still doing okay, that didn't kill me. But in 10 years' time, who knows where that's going? So you need to be an organisation that can engage with that. So when we're looking now at our IT and our practice management software and how all that sort of can all tie together so that we have our data secure and live and that sort of thing, we're also looking at which companies are engaged in that federal government initiative, right, of being involved in that electronic system so that we're planning for the future. If you're a practitioner by yourself, you can't possibly be in this. And I don't mean that as a threat, I'm just making an observation. So if we can bring people into the group who want to join in that journey, then yes, we can grow along those sort of lines. And it's very much what I was saying earlier about the cluster, or the cluster model. I think that that's where there's a lot of opportunity for individuals that want to go down that route. Anything else? I'll answer any question.
All done.
No, really.
Well, so,
No. What? I mean, I suppose from people who've been in life for a little while, this has been a road traversed down slightly in the past, and it didn't quite turn out as planned. What's been lessons learned from this sort of approach in the past? I'm not sure if Michael Kenham might want to comment.
No, I don't think I can comment on that because I've read a lot of documents. And some of it historical, some of it's been fabulous stuff to read. It's been very good. Really sort of, I mean, for example, we were talking about, again, I've said it, read an APA document that says the same. I'll sort of go around this in a little bit of a direction. The APA is saying that physiotherapists are falling behind in their income. How do you analyse that? How can you say what's going wrong? Well, physios just aren't putting their fees up enough. It's basic. It's not much simpler than that. Their costs are going like this. The revenues are going like this. They're doing really well. They're seeing the patient numbers. At the end of the year, same money. Right? So their profitability is being eaten away, which means that the professionals, that their income is being eaten away, and that they're sort of, it's getting less and less every year. A document I read the other day was from 15 years ago, Ralph Shreed, who apparently probably still is quite a character, was saying that very same thing, as was the APA now. So we're encouraging all our practitioners to take a very serious look. Not because we want corporate profits. This is not a corporate-driven thing. It's saying, as a practitioner, because you're sharing a percentage of the fees, and as an equity holder, you deserve to do better. So we give you that information to say, this is why it's going wrong. It's nothing else, it's just that. So the lessons that are learned is you don't just buy practices because they're for sale. We were offered one just the other day. We looked at it and said it's 2 rooms. We can't grow it. In 18 months we'd have to move. We have to fit it all out again and whatever. No thanks. That doesn't fit any strategy that we have. So that's lesson number 1, is you don't just go out and buy. Lesson number 2 is that this equity model of shared equity in practices, I know you're not one of them, but is a very good model. That we're partnering with people, not being the owner or the dominant party. I think those 2 things are the important thing. And the third, I think, is that there is a strategic approach to what we're doing, and that everybody knows that we're not doing things for the sake of it, that we have quite a clear plan about where we want to get to, even though it might sometimes appear that way. But we are heading to being a national body with national services, national initiatives, initiatives with groups like HealthScope and Ramsay, who are national, and engaging with them so that everybody does one national. So I think they're the lessons. And probably the last bit, which is, I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, how would you describe Lifecare if it was a public company? What would you be looking for? I said, okay, the word that I would use to our funds managers and whatever that might invest in Lifecare is, the word I would use is boring. Excruciatingly boring. Every year the same result, the same dividend, right? I'm a very conservative manager. The people that are on the board are very conservative. We are very disciplined in what we do, and we don't just do things on a whim. It's all costed, it's all studied, it's whatever. So that's what I want Lifecare to be. Exciting to work in, a brilliant organisation, but for an investor, boring. Same revenue, same dividends. I don't know if that's answered your question, but there have been mistakes made in the past. There's been plenty of them. So.
I just got to is it target profit margin?
As much as possible, but no, again, boring. We know the margins that we need to achieve, and for an investor, the margins determine the share price. If they put a sort of a multiple on that as to how much they value boring. But yeah, we have ideas, and I would like to improve profitability by reducing costs where we can, and by initiatives like increasing fees, and being encouraged to do that. I said to the state managers, I'd like to see the practices and the practitioners have a 2-year plan for their fees. Not, it's January the 1st, I think I'll put them up $2. To have a serious plan saying that in the next 2 years I'm going to put them up a certain percentage and try and claw back some of these things. Again, which is going to help the margin for everybody. But again, the real driver, I'm satisfied with the margins we have now. The real driver is saying that the practitioners and the practices do better. And if they do better, we do better as a corporation. Yeah, obviously more margin's always better. More than less any day.
I think we might be done.
It's done. Thank you, Michael.
Just like you to join me in thanking both Michael and John for